Sent west in shame, Annabelle meets a man who claims to have seen her in dreams. But can love born of visions withstand the wrath of a vengeful suitor? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Essay. Train whistle pierced the hot afternoon air as it pulled into Red Ash Station. Dust swirled around the platform, coating everything in a fine layer of grit. Annabelle Cresswell pressed a lace handkerchief to her nose and mouth as she stepped down from the train. Her blue traveling dress, once crisp and elegant in St. Louis, now felt heavy and suffocating in the western heat. "Miss Cresswell?" A thin man with a weathered face approached her. "I'm Sam Wilson, Mr. Rowe's foreman. I'm here to take you to the ranch." Annabelle nodded weakly. "Yes, thank you, I just need a moment." The journey had been long, and the weight of why she was here pressed down on her like a physical burden. She thought back to her father's cold eyes as he'd informed her of the arrangement. "You'll marry Clint Rowe. He's a wealthy rancher out west who needs a wife, and you," his voice had hardened, "you need to disappear from society before your indiscretion becomes even more of a scandal." Her indiscretion, being caught in a garden kiss with her music teacher, a moment of weakness that had cost her everything. "Your bags, miss?" Sam Wilson's voice brought her back to the present. "Yes, of course." She pointed to her trunks as the man loaded them onto a dusty wagon. Annabelle looked around at Red Ash. One main street lined with wooden buildings, men in cowboy hats, women in practical dresses rushing about their business. Nothing like the society life she'd known. The heat seemed to intensify with each passing minute. As they drove toward the Rowe Ranch, Annabelle felt increasingly lightheaded. The sun beat down mercilessly, and her corset felt like it was squeezing the life out of her. "How much further?" she managed to ask. "About another hour, miss." An hour. She wouldn't make it an hour. Black spots danced at the edges of her vision. She tried to speak again, but her tongue felt thick in her mouth. "Miss, you all right?" Annabelle felt herself slipping sideways on the seat, and then everything went dark, cool. That was her first thought as consciousness slowly returned. Cool air on her face, the smell of herbs and earth. Annabelle's eyes fluttered open, and she found herself looking up at a ceiling of animal hide stretched over wooden poles. "A tent? You're awake." The voice was deep and gentle. Annabelle turned her head to see a man sitting beside her. Not Sam Wilson. This man was tall and broad-shouldered, with long black hair and eyes so dark and knowing they seemed to look straight through her. His face was painted with soft earth markings, and he wore a simple shirt with intricate beadwork at the collar. "Who are you?" Her voice came out as a whisper. "Where am I?" "My name is Tohan." He dipped a cloth in water and gently placed it on her forehead. "You are in my healing tent. The ranch foreman brought you here when you collapsed. The town doctor is away, and they know I have skills." Annabelle tried to sit up, but dizziness forced her back down. "Rest," Tohan said. "Heat sickness takes time to pass. But I need to get to the ranch. My fiancé is waiting." Something flickered in Tohan's eyes. "Clint Rowe can wait. You need medicine and rest." The way he said Clint's name with such restraint made Annabelle wonder what lay behind it. "How long have I been here?" "Since yesterday." Tohan stood and moved to a table where herbs hung from racks above. He began to mix something in a wooden bowl. "The foreman will return for you tomorrow if you are well enough." Annabelle watched him work, his movements precise and confident. There was something soothing about his presence, something that made her racing thoughts slow down. "You don't seem surprised to have a white woman in your care," she observed. Tohan turned to look at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her breath catch. "I am not surprised to see you, Annabelle Cresswell. I have seen you before." A chill ran through her that had nothing to do with her illness. "That's impossible. I've never been west of the Mississippi until now." Tohan approached with a cup of steaming liquid. "Not in person, in dreams." He helped her sit up slightly and offered the cup. 3 moons ago, you came to me in sleep, standing by water, weeping. I saw your face clearly. I heard your name on the wind." Annabelle's hand trembled as she took the cup. That's nonsense. Dreams are just dreams. Drink," he instructed gently. "It will help cool your body from within." The liquid was bitter but not unpleasant. As she drank, Annabelle studied Tohan's face. He seemed completely sincere, which unnerved her even more. "In my culture," he said, taking the empty cup, "dreams carry messages. They show us what has been, what is, and sometimes what may be." "And what did your dream show you about me?" She couldn't believe she was even entertaining this conversation. "Sorrow," he said simply. "A cage not made of iron but of words and promises, and a choice." Annabelle looked away, uncomfortable with how his words seemed to touch on her situation. "I don't believe in such things. Dreams are just the mind working through the day's events." "Then how did I know your name before Sam Wilson spoke it?" Tohan asked quietly. "How did I see your face before you arrived in Red Ash?" She had no answer for that. By the next morning, Annabelle felt much better physically, though her mind was troubled. Tohan had given her privacy in a sectioned-off part of his large tent, and she'd slept deeply. Now, dressed again in her travel clothes, which someone had cleaned, she sat outside the tent watching Tohan tend to a small garden of plants she didn't recognize. "These are medicine," he explained when he noticed her watching. "Each one speaks to different ailments in the body." "Where did you learn all this?" she asked. "From my father, who learned from his father, but also from listening." He touched a leaf gently. "Plants tell you how to use them if you know how to listen." Annabelle would have dismissed such talk, a superstition a day ago. Now she wasn't so sure. "The ranch foreman will come soon," Tohan said, straightening up. "You are feeling strong enough to travel?" "Yes, thank you." She hesitated, then added, "I don't know how to repay your kindness." Tohan shook his head. "Healing is not given with the expectation of payment." "Still, Miss Cresswell," Sam Wilson's voice called out. He approached on horseback, leading a wagon. His expression was a mixture of relief and discomfort as he glanced between her and Tohan. "You're looking better. Mr. Rowe sent me to bring you to the ranch right away." Annabelle stood, brushing dust from her skirt. "Yes, of course, as..." Wilson helped gather her things. Tohan approached her one last time. "The path ahead has many turns," he said quietly. "Remember that even the strongest current can be redirected." She didn't know what to say to that, so she simply nodded. "Thank you for your care." As the wagon pulled away, Annabelle found herself looking back at the figure of Tohan, standing tall and still beside his tent. Something tugged at her heart, a feeling she couldn't name. Clint Rowe's ranch house was impressive by frontier standards, a 2-story wooden structure with a wide porch and glass windows. Cattle dotted the surrounding pastures, and ranch hands moved about their business with purpose. It spoke of wealth and hard work. Annabelle was shown to a bedroom where she quickly refreshed herself before meeting her fiancé. Her stomach twisted with anxiety. What would he be like? Would he be kind? Would he understand that their marriage was merely a business arrangement, at least at first? When she descended the stairs, she found a man waiting in the sitting room, tall and broad, with a weathered face and hard eyes. His brown hair was flecked with grey at the temples, and his clothes, while good quality, were practical. He turned as she entered, his gaze travelling over her in a way that made her feel like livestock being assessed. "Miss Cresswell," he said, his voice gruff. "Welcome to my home. I'm Clint Rowe." "Mr. Rowe." She curtsied slightly. "Thank you for your welcome. Heard you took sick on the way, unfortunate, though I can't say I approve of you being treated by that Indian." The dismissive way he said it made Annabelle bristle slightly. Mr. Tohan was very professional and skilled. "I'm grateful for his help." Clint waved a hand as if swatting away a fly. "Well, you're here now. We'll be married by Pastor Williams on Sunday. That gives you 3 days to rest and prepare." "Sunday?" Annabelle's heart raced. "So soon?" "No point in waiting. I paid good money to your father for this match. Time to make it official." He looked at her again, his expression softening slightly. "You'll want for nothing here. I'm a wealthy man, and I'll be fair to you. Fair, not loving or kind. Fair, like a business transaction. I'm sure you will be," she managed to say. "Good, I have work to see to. Mrs. Perkins will show you around and help you settle in." He nodded toward an older woman waiting by the door, then strode out without another word. As Mrs. Perkins led her through the house, explaining the routines and expectations, Annabel felt a hollowness growing inside her. This was to be her life now. A marriage without love to a man who saw her as a possession, a beautiful cage, just as Tohan had described. Tohan. His face came unbidden to her mind, the gentleness in his hands as he tended to her, the wisdom in his eyes? Miss? Mrs. Perkins was looking at her expectantly. "I'm sorry, what did you say?" "I asked if you'd like tea before resting." "Yes, thank you. That would be lovely." As she sipped her tea by the window, Annabel gazed out at the vast landscape. Somewhere out there was a tent with herbs hanging from the ceiling and a man who claimed to have dreamed her name before ever meeting her. A man who made her feel seen in a way no one ever had before. The next day, Annabel found herself restless. Clint was busy with ranch business, and while Mrs. Perkins tried to engage her in discussions about the upcoming wedding and her duties as Mrs. Rowe, Annabel couldn't focus. "I think I'd like some air," she announced after lunch. "Perhaps a short walk?" Mrs. Perkins frowned. "Mr. Rowe prefers you stay close to the house, miss. It's not safe for a lady to wander." "Just around the garden, then," Annabel insisted. She needed to move, to think. Once outside, she walked to the edge of the garden, where a small stream ran through the property. The water bubbled over rocks, the sound soothing her troubled mind. She thought about Tohan's dream, seeing her by water weeping. "Ridiculous," she murmured to herself. "Miss Cresswell." She turned to find Sam Wilson approaching. "Mr. Wilson, hello. Just checking if you need anything. Mr. Rowe asked me to keep an eye out." Keep an eye on me, more like, she thought. "I'm fine, thank you. Just enjoying some fresh air." Wilson nodded, then hesitated. "If you don't mind me saying, miss, you seem troubled." Annabel was surprised by his perception. "I'm just adjusting. It's all very new." Of course, another pause. "Mr. Rowe is a good man in his way, honest, fair in business." "In business," she repeated softly. Wilson looked uncomfortable. "I should get back to work. Town's having a small gathering tonight. At the saloon. Nothing rowdy, just music and such. Mr. Rowe usually attends. Might be a good chance for you to meet some folks." After he left, Annabel stayed by the stream, thinking. She would be married in 2 days to a man who treated her. A rival like a shipment of goods. A man who spoke about fairness but not love. Was this really to be her life? She thought of her father's words. Marry, obey, vanish. That was her punishment for one moment of weakness back east. As the sun began to set, Annabel made a decision. She needed to understand this place and her future husband better before Sunday. She would attend this gathering tonight. The Red Ash Saloon was the largest building on the main street, its windows glowing with lamplight. Inside, tables had been pushed aside to create space for dancing, and someone played a fiddle in the corner. It wasn't the elegant balls of St. Louis, but there was a warmth and life to it that drew Annabel in. Clint had been surprised when she'd asked to accompany him, but had agreed readily enough. "Good for folks to meet my bride," he'd said. Now, he stood with a group of men, discussing cattle prices while Annabel sat with some of the local women who were politely curious about her. "St. Louis, how exciting," said Mrs. Foster, the shopkeeper's wife. "You must find Red Ash terribly dull in comparison." "Not at all," Annabel replied diplomatically. "It has its own charm." As the evening progressed, Annabel observed Clint. He was respected here, certainly. Men deferred to him, sought his opinion, but there was little warmth in these interactions. No real friendship that she could see. "Would you like to dance, Miss Cresswell?" A young ranch hand whose name she'd forgotten stood before her. Before she could answer, Clint's voice cut in. "My fiancé won't be dancing tonight, Parker. Not feeling fully recovered yet." Annabel hadn't told him any such thing, but she held her tongue as the young man nodded and retreated. "I'm perfectly capable of dancing, Mr. Rowe," she said quietly, when they were alone. "Not with ranch hands," he replied, his tone making it clear the matter was settled. "Appearances matter, Annabel. You'll be Mrs. Clint Rowe soon. There are expectations, another set of rules, another cage." Annabel was about to respond when movement near the door caught her eye. Tohan had entered the saloon, and the room had quieted noticeably. He didn't seem bothered by the attention, moving with quiet dignity to the bar. "What's he doing here?" Clint muttered, his face darkening. The barkeeper served Tohan without comment, though Annabelle noticed he didn't look the Zuni man in the eye. "Does he come here often?" she asked. "Too often for my liking," Clint replied. "Some folks are too accepting of his kind in town because he helps with medical needs. I say let him stay with his people where he belongs." The bitterness in his voice shocked her. "He helped me when I was ill, and I'm grateful for that," Clint said, though his tone suggested otherwise. "But there's a natural order to things." "Annabelle, best not to disrupt it." Across the room, Tohan turned slightly, his eyes meeting hers. He didn't smile or nod, but something passed between them, a recognition. Then he took his drink and moved to a corner table, alone. Throughout the evening, Annabelle found her gaze drawn to him again and again. Once, when Clint was deep in conversation with the mayor, she watched as a young woman approached Tohan's table. The girl couldn't have been more than 16, and she spoke to him earnestly, her hands gesturing to her throat. Tohan listened intently, then said something that made her nod gratefully before she returned to her family. Later, as they prepared to leave, Annabelle found herself walking past Tohan's table. She slowed, feeling Clint's eyes on her from across. "The room, Mr. Tohan," she said softly. "I wanted to thank you again for your help." He looked up at her, those dark eyes seeming to see straight to her soul. "You are looking well, Miss Cresswell." "Yes, thanks to your medicine." "The body heals quickly," he said. "Other wounds take longer." Before she could ask what he meant, Clint was at her side, his hand firmly on her elbow. "Time to go, Annabelle." Outside, as they walked to the wagon, Clint's grip on her arm tightened. "I don't want you speaking to him again, is that clear?" "He saved my life," Annabelle protested. "He did what anyone would do, nothing special about it." Clint helped her into the wagon with more force than necessary. "I won't have my wife associating with his kind. That's final." As they rode back to the ranch in silence, Annabelle felt a coldness settling over her. This was the man she was to marry, a man who could dismiss another human being so easily, who could give orders without discussion. She thought of Tohan's words about the stream. Even the strongest current can be redirected. But how? She was trapped by her father's arrangement, by society's expectations, by her own shame. That night, lying in bed, Annabelle wept silently into her pillow. And somewhere, she wondered if Tohan was dreaming of her tears. The day before, the wedding dawned bright and clear. The ranch was bustling with preparations, women from town helping to decorate, ranch hands constructing a simple arch in the garden where the ceremony would take place. Annabelle moved through it all as if in a dream, nodding and smiling when appropriate, but feeling disconnected from everything around her. This wasn't the wedding she had once imagined for herself. This wasn't the life she wanted. "You'll need to approve the final menu, miss," Mrs. Perkins said, following her onto the porch. "Whatever Mr. Rowe prefers is fine," Annabelle replied absently, her gaze drawn to the distant hills. "Are you feeling unwell again? You're very pale." "I just need some air." "Some time to think." Mrs. Perkins looked concerned. "The wedding is tomorrow, miss. Everything is arranged." "Yes, I know." Annabelle forced a smile. "I just need a moment alone." She walked to the stable, where she found a young ranch hand named Billy tending to the horses. "Miss Cresswell," he said, tipping his hat. "Can I help you?" "I'd like to go for a ride," she said, the decision forming as she spoke. "Just a short one, to clear my head before tomorrow." Billy looked uncertain. "Mr. Rowe didn't mention—" "It's my wedding tomorrow, Billy. Surely a bride is allowed a moment of peace beforehand." The boy couldn't argue with that. Soon, Annabelle was mounted on a gentle mare, riding away from the ranch. She had no particular destination in mind, just the need to escape the suffocating feeling that had been growing inside her. She followed the stream that ran through the property, letting the horse pick its way along the bank. The further she got from the ranch, the more she could breathe. Out here, with the wide sky above and the open land around her, she could think clearly for the first time in days. Was she really going to go through with this marriage? Bind herself to a man like Clint Rowe, who saw her as a possession? who dismissed others with such casual cruelty. Her father's warning echoed in her mind. This is your only chance, Annabel. Marry Roe or be disowned completely. The stream widened as she followed it, eventually opening into a small pond nestled among cottonwood trees. Annabel dismounted, letting the mare drink while she sat on a fallen log. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice she wasn't alone until a voice spoke. The water brings peace to troubled minds. Annabel started, turning to find Tohan, standing a few yards away. He wore simple buckskin pants and a loose shirt, his long hair tied back. You startled me, she said, her heart racing. What are you doing here? This is where I come to gather certain plants that only grow near still water. He indicated a small pouch at his waist. And you? You are far from the ranch. I needed to think. She looked back at the pond, its surface reflecting the blue sky. Tomorrow I marry Clint Rowe. Tohan moved closer, though still keeping a respectful distance. And this brings you joy? Such a simple question, but it pierced straight to her heart. It brings me security, she answered honestly, a place in society, a home, but not joy. Annabel felt tears prick at her eyes. Joy isn't always possible. Sometimes we must settle for what is offered. Tohan sat on the far end of the log, his movements fluid and graceful. In my dream you stood by water like this, weeping as you fight not to do now. Stop talking about dreams, she said, suddenly angry. Dreams don't matter in the real world. In the real world I have no choice but to marry a man I barely know because I made one mistake back home. In the real world I have to obey my father and become Mrs. Clint Rowe or lose everything. There are always choices, Tohan said quietly. Even when they seem impossible to see. What would you know about it? She challenged. You're free out here. You don't understand what it's like to be a woman with no money, no power, and a ruined reputation. I know what it is to be seen as less than human by men like Clint Rowe, he replied. No anger in his voice, just truth. I know what it is to live by others' rules and expectations. The simple honesty in his words deflated her anger. I'm sorry. That was unfair of me. They sat in silence for a moment. The only sounds, the gentle lapping of water and birdsong from the trees. Why did you help me that day? Annabel finally asked. You could have refused. I am a healer. I help those in need. Tohan looked at her directly. But also, I knew your face. I knew you would be important. Important how? Instead of answering, he reached into a small pouch at his belt and withdrew something. He held it out to her, a small smooth stone with veins of blue running through it. What is this? She asked, taking it hesitantly. A dream stone. My grandfather gave it to me when I began having visions. He said it helps clear the mind to see the truth. The stone was cool against her palm, surprisingly heavy for its size. I can't accept this. You already have, Tohan said simply. Keep it. Perhaps it will help you find your own truth. The sound of hoofbeats in the distance made them both look up. Riders were approaching. Clint's men, Annabel said, suddenly fearful. They must be looking for me. Tohan stood. You should go to them. It is not safe for you to be seen with me. She knew he was right, but something made her hesitate. Tohan, if I marry him tomorrow, the body can lie, the spirit cannot, he said, his eyes intense. If you marry that man, your soul will mourn you while you still breathe. The riders were getting closer. Annabel clutched the dream stone tightly as she moved toward her horse. Thank you, she said, though for what exactly she wasn't sure. Tohan nodded once, then melted back into the trees as if he'd never been there at all. As she mounted and rode toward the approaching ranch hands, Annabel slipped the stone into her pocket. Tomorrow she would stand at the altar beside Clint Rowe. Tomorrow she would say words that would bind her to him forever, unless she found another choice. Wedding day dawned with a sky so blue it hurt to look at it. The ranch was buzzing with activity. Women arranging flowers, men setting up chairs in the garden, Mrs. Perkins fussing over the wedding cake in the kitchen. Upstairs, Annabel sat at the vanity in her room, staring at her reflection. The woman looking back at her seemed like a stranger, pale, with shadows under her eyes that even powder couldn't quite hide. Her wedding dress, shipped from St. Louis by her father, lay on the bed behind her. White satin and lace, beautiful and cold. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the smooth blue-veined stone Tohan had given her. All night she had slept with it under her pillow, and her dreams had been vivid and strange. Water flowing over rocks, changing direction when it met obstacles. Always finding a way forward. A knock at the door made her quickly hide the stone. "Come in." Mrs. Perkins entered, carrying a tray with tea and toast. "You need to eat something, miss. Big day ahead." "Thank you." Annabelle took the tea but couldn't. Imagine eating. The ministers arrived and guests are starting to come. Mr. Rowe is already dressed and waiting downstairs. Mrs. Perkins bustled around the room, picking up the wedding dress. "Let's get you ready now." As the older woman helped her into the dress, fastening the long row of tiny buttons up the back, Annabelle felt as if she were being sealed into a coffin. The corset beneath squeezed her ribs, making it hard to take a full breath. "You look beautiful," Mrs. Perkins said, stepping back to admire her work. "Like an angel." Annabelle tried to smile, but her face felt frozen. "Could I have a few minutes alone? To pray before the ceremony?" Mrs. Perkins nodded approvingly. "Of course, dear. I'll come fetch you when it's time." Once alone, Annabelle moved to the window. From here she could see the garden where chairs were arranged in neat rows facing a simple wooden arch decorated with wildflowers. People in their Sunday best were taking their seats, ranchers and their wives, shopkeepers from town, even the mayor. Clint stood to one side with the minister, looking uncomfortable in a formal suit, but also pleased, like a man about to close a profitable business deal. She clutched the dreamstone in her palm, feeling its cool, smooth surface. Tohan's words echoed in her mind. "If you marry that man, your soul will mourn you while you still breathe." A knock on the door announced Mrs. Perkins. "It's time, dear." The walk from the house to the garden was the longest of Annabelle's life. Every step felt heavy, as if her feet were sinking into the earth. Music played, someone on a fiddle attempting a wedding march, and all faces turned to watch her approach. Clint waited at the arch, his expression unreadable. He didn't smile as she joined him, just offered his arm stiffly as they turned to face the minister. "Dearly beloved," the minister began, his voice carrying across the hushed garden, "we are gathered here today to join this man and this woman in holy matrimony." Annabelle heard the words as if from a great distance. Her heart pounded so loudly in her ears, she was sure everyone must hear it. Her hand, hidden in the folds of her dress, clutched the dreamstone so tightly her knuckles were white. "Marriage is not to be entered into lightly," the minister continued, "but with reverence and solemnity." Was this solemn? It felt more like a business transaction, a sale. Her father had sold her to Clint Rowe to hide her away, and she was about to agree to the terms. "If anyone here knows any reason why these two should not be joined, let them speak now or forever hold their peace." Silence filled the garden. No one would speak. No one would object to Clint Rowe getting what he paid for. Except, "I object." The words hung in the air for a moment before Annabelle realized they had come from her own mouth. Clint turned to her, his face a mask of confusion that quickly hardened into anger. "What did you say?" I can't do this." Her voice was soft but grew stronger with each word. "I'm sorry, Mr. Rowe, but I cannot marry you." Murmurs swept through the gathered guests. The minister looked between them uncertainly. "Miss Cresswell, perhaps you're just having a moment of—" "I'm not having a moment of anything," Annabelle said, stepping back from Clint. "I am making a choice. My choice." Clint grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in painfully. "You don't have a choice," he hissed. "Your father and I have an agreement. You are mine." The ugliness in his voice, the possessiveness, confirmed everything she had feared. Annabelle pulled her arm free. "I am not property to be bought and sold. I am a person, and I choose not to marry you." She turned and walked back down the aisle, ignoring the gasps and whispers. Her steps grew faster until she was almost running by the time she reached the house. In her room, she quickly changed out of the wedding dress, her fingers fumbling with the buttons. She put on her simplest traveling dress and stuffed a few essentials into a small bag. There was no time to pack properly. She needed to be gone before Clint came after her. As she slipped out the back door of the kitchen, she could hear angry voices from the garden. She didn't wait to hear more, hurrying toward the stable. Billy was there, his eyes wide with shock. "Miss Creswell, everyone's saying you called off the wedding." "I need a horse, Billy, please." The boy hesitated, clearly, torn between helping her and loyalty to his employer. "Billy, please. Mr. Rowe is angry. I need to leave now." Something in her desperate tone must have moved him. He quickly saddled the mare she had ridden yesterday. "Where will you go?" he asked as he helped her mount. Annabelle thought of only one place, one person. "Just tell them I went east," she said, then kicked the horse into motion. She rode hard, not taking the main road, but cutting across open country toward where she knew Tohan's tent to be. The sun was high overhead, beating down mercilessly, but she didn't slow. Behind her, she imagined Clint organizing men to search for her, his face dark with fury. When she finally spotted the tent in the distance, a wave of relief washed over her. She slowed the mare to a walk, suddenly unsure. What was she doing? Running to a man she barely knew, a man from a completely different world than her own. But as she approached, Tohan emerged from the tent as if he had been expecting her. He stood tall and still, watching her come. Annabelle dismounted, her legs shaky from the hard ride. For a moment, they simply looked at each other across the small distance that separated them. "I left him," she finally said, her voice catching. "At the altar, I just walked away." Tohan nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know. You know? I felt it." He touched his chest over his heart. "Here." Annabelle took a step toward him, then another. "I didn't know where else to go." "You came to the right place," Tohan said simply. He held out his hand to her. Annabelle hesitated only a moment before placing her hand in his. His skin was warm, his grip firm but gentle. She pulled the dreamstone from her pocket with her other hand. "I think this helped me find my way." "The stone doesn't guide," Tohan said. "It only helps us hear what our own heart is already saying." Tears filled Annabelle's eyes, not of sadness but of relief, of finally feeling seen and understood. "I thought I came here to marry a cowboy," she said softly. "But maybe I was sent to find the man who already saw me, before I even arrived." Tohan didn't kiss her. Instead, he lifted her hand and pressed it to his heart. She could feel the steady, strong beat beneath her palm. "Then let us begin again," he said. "Not as what others made us, but as what we choose." The next few days passed in a strange, peaceful haze. Annabelle stayed in Tohan's tent, sleeping on a pallet of soft furs while he slept outside by the fire. They talked for hours, she telling him about her life in St. Louis, the scandal that had led to her being sent west, her fears and hopes. He sharing stories of his people, his training as a healer, his connection to the land and its rhythms. "My father died when I was 16, he told her one evening as they sat by the fire. "He was the tribe's medicine man. My training wasn't complete, but I had to step into his role." "That must have been difficult," Annabelle said. "So much responsibility at a young age." Tohan nodded. "I made mistakes. People suffered because I didn't know enough." His face grew solemn in the firelight. "That is why I continued to seek knowledge wherever I could find it, from elders of other tribes, from books when I could get them, from watching and listening to the world itself." "Is that why you live here, away from your people?" "Partly. The Zuni elders sent me to be a bridge between our world and yours, to heal where healing is needed." He poked at the fire with a stick. "And also because of my dreams, they told me to wait here, that someone important would come." Annabelle felt a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. "And you think that someone is me?" Tohan looked at her, his dark eyes reflecting the flames. "I know it is. On the 4th day, Sam Wilson rode up to the tent. Annabelle tensed, fearing he had come to take her back, but the foreman merely dismounted and approached with his hat in his hands. "Miss Creswell," he said, nodding respectfully. "Mr. Tohan." "What brings you here, Sam?" Tohan asked calmly. "Two things. First, to let Miss Creswell know her father sent a telegram. Wilson pulled a folded paper from his pocket and handed it to her. Mr. Rowe asked me to deliver it. With trembling hands, Annabel unfolded the telegram. Annabel, stop your actions. Disgrace this family, stop, you are no longer my daughter. Stop, do not attempt to return home, stop, father. The words stung, but not as deeply as she had feared they might. In a way, it was a relief. A clean break with her old life. Thank you, Sam, she said, folding the paper again. There's more, Wilson said, looking uncomfortable. Mr. Rowe is... well, he's not taking the situation well. He's been drinking heavily and making threats. He glanced at Tohan. Mostly against you, sir. Tohan nodded, unsurprised. Thank you for the warning. I'd be careful if I were you. Both of you. Wilson put his hat back on. That's all I came to say. After he rode away, Annabel turned to Tohan, worry etched on her face. What if he comes here? What if he tries to hurt you? Clint Rowe is a man who believes his money can buy anything, land, cattle, people. When he learns something cannot be bought, it angers him. Tohan took her hands in his. But we cannot live in fear of his anger. We must live our own truth. That evening, as they shared a simple meal, Annabel asked the question that had been on her mind for days. What happens now? With us? Tohan considered her question carefully. What do you want to happen? I want to stay with you, she said without hesitation. I want to learn from you, about healing, about your people, about this land. She looked down at their joined hands. I want to build something new, something true. The path will not be easy, he warned. The world will not understand what we are to each other. I don't care what the world understands. I only care what we understand. Annabel met his gaze steadily. I choose this. I choose you. Tohan touched her cheek gently. Then I choose you too, Annabel Cresswell. Today, and all the days that follow. Summer turned to fall, and Annabel's life settled into a new rhythm. She moved with Tohan to a small cabin he had built at the edge of Zuniland, close enough to Red Ash for him to continue his healing work in town, but far enough away to give them peace. Annabel learned quickly. Tohan taught her the names and uses of countless plants, how to prepare medicines, how to listen to the body's whispers before they became shouts of pain. She discovered she had a natural gift for healing, gentle hands, and an intuitive understanding of suffering. Together, they began to treat those who sought help, mostly poor farmers and their families, women from town who couldn't afford the doctor, occasionally even Zuni people who came seeking Tohan's skills. Word spread of the white woman who lived with the Zuni healer, who spoke softly and knew the old ways. Some came out of curiosity, others out of desperation. Annabel treated them all with the same care and respect Tohan had shown her. In the evenings, Tohan taught her to read the stars, to understand the patterns of wind and rain, to hear the messages in animal calls, and she taught him to read English. Better, to write his name alongside hers in a ledger where they kept records of those they had treated. One night, as they sat by their fire, Tohan took her hands in his. I want to show you something. He led her to a loose floorboard beneath their bed, lifting it to reveal a small space beneath. From it, he withdrew a book bound in leather. What is this? Annabel asked. My father's medicine book, Tohan explained, opening it carefully. The pages were filled with drawings of plants, animals, and symbols she didn't recognize, with text in a language she couldn't read. All his knowledge is here, and now I want to add our knowledge too. Together, they created a new book, one that combined Tohan's traditional healing wisdom with what Annabel knew from her own world. They kept it hidden beneath the floor, a secret treasure of their shared life. But their peaceful existence couldn't last forever. The world beyond their cabin door was not as accepting of their choices as they were. It began with whispers in town when they went to buy supplies. Women would pull their children closer as Annabel passed. Men would stare coldly at Tohan. The shopkeeper, once friendly, now barely spoke as he took their money. They don't understand, Annabel said one day as they rode home, the townsfolk's stares still burning in her memory. Understanding requires an open heart, Tohan replied. Many keep theirs closed out of fear. The true trouble began when Martha Jenkins, the banker's wife, came to them late one night, her young son burning with fever. The town doctor was away, and the boy's condition was worsening by the hour. Tohan and Annabelle worked through the night, using a mixture of herbs to break the fever and compresses to cool the child's body. By morning, the boy was sleeping peacefully. The worst of the danger passed. Martha wept with gratitude. "I don't know how to thank you both." "No thanks needed," Annabelle assured her. "Just take him home and keep him warm and resting for a few days." But when Martha's husband discovered where she had taken their son, his rage knew no bounds. He rode to their cabin the next day, his face red with fury. "You kept my wife and son here all night?" he demanded, looking between Tohan and Annabelle with disgust. "In this savage's home?" "Mr. Jenkins, your son was very ill," Annabelle tried to explain. "We couldn't move him until the fever broke. My boy wouldn't have needed help at all if you hadn't filled Martha's head with your heathen nonsense." Jenkins spat on the ground at Tohan's feet. "Stay away from my family, both of you. And you," he pointed at Annabelle. "You should be ashamed living like this. No decent white woman would lower herself this way." After he left, Annabelle's hands shook with anger and hurt. How can he speak to us that way when we saved his son's life? "Pride often speaks louder than gratitude," Tohan said, his voice calm, though his eyes were sad. "This is only the beginning, Annabelle. Are you prepared for what may come?" She lifted her chin. "I made my choice, Tohan. I won't go back on it now." The incident with the Jenkins family was just the first ripple in a growing wave of hostility. The town that had once tolerated Tohan now seemed united against them both. Fewer people came seeking healing. Those who did often came in secret at night. One morning, they awoke to find the word "squaw" painted on their door in red letters. Annabelle felt sick at the sight of it. "What does it mean?" she asked, though part of her already knew. "It is what white men call Indian women," Tohan said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "But they use it to mean something dirty, something less than human." Annabelle scrubbed at the paint until her hands were raw, but traces of it remained, a constant reminder of the hatred surrounding them. That night, as they lay together in the darkness, Annabelle asked, "Should we leave? Go somewhere else where people don't know us?" Tohan was quiet for a long moment. "Running solves nothing. The same hatred exists everywhere." He turned to face her in the darkness. "But if you want to go, we will go." "No," she said firmly. "This is our home. I won't be chased away by ignorance and fear." He pressed his forehead to hers, their breath mingling in the cool night air. "Then we stay and face what comes together." What came next was Clint Rowe. For months he had been noticeably absent from their troubles. Sam Wilson had told them that Rowe had traveled east on business, leaving the ranch in the foreman's care. Annabelle had hoped that perhaps he had moved on, forgotten about her. She was wrong. Clint returned to Red Ash as winter approached, and the news traveled quickly to their cabin. He had come back with new plans for expanding his ranch, and with a new hatred burning in his heart. "He's been asking about you in town," Sam Wilson told them during one of his occasional visits, "offering money for information about your routines, when you're alone, when you go to town." "He means to harm us," Tohan said. It wasn't a question. Wilson nodded grimly. "I believe so. He's drinking heavily, gathering some of the rougher men from the saloon around him. There's talk." "What kind of talk?" Annabelle pressed. Wilson looked uncomfortable. "Talk of teaching the Indian a lesson for stealing what belongs to Clint, and talk of rescuing you, Miss Cresswell, whether you want to be rescued or not." After Wilson left, Annabelle and Tohan sat by their fire in silence, the weight of the threat hanging between them. "Perhaps you should go," Tohan finally said. "Stay with friends among my people until this danger passes." "And leave you here alone?" Annabelle shook her head fiercely. "Never. We face this together, remember?" They began to take precautions, never going to town alone, always keeping weapons close at hand, taking turns keeping watch at night. The strain began to show in the dark circles under their eyes, in the tension that hummed between them. Winter settled over the land, blanketing the hills in snow and ice. The cold kept many indoors. and for a time it seemed the threat from Clint might have receded. Annabelle began to hope they had overreacted, that the danger would pass with the season. Then came the night of the first thaw, when the ice began to melt and the wind carried the promise of spring. They were awakened by the smell of smoke. "Fire!" Tohan shouted, pulling Annabelle from their bed. Flames were already licking at the cabin walls, spreading quickly along the dry wood. They stumbled outside into the cold night air, coughing from the smoke that filled their lungs. The fire had been set in multiple places around the cabin. No accident, but a deliberate act. And waiting in the darkness, mounted on horses, were Clint Rowe and 5 other men. "Well, well," Clint said, his voice slurred with drink but his eyes cold and focused. "Looks like you two need some help. Cabin's burning down." "You did this," Annabelle said, anger overcoming her fear. "You could have killed us. Just wanted to smoke you out, darling. Time to come home where you belong." Clint dismounted, swaying slightly. "You've had your fun playing Indian lover. Novelty's worn off now, I expect." Tohan stepped in front of Annabelle, his stance protective but not aggressive. "Leave now, Rowe. You've done enough damage." One of the men with Clint laughed. "Listen to the savage giving orders to white men." "She's coming with me," Clint said, ignoring Tohan and speaking directly to Annabelle. "Your father signed a contract. I paid good money for you." "I am not property," Annabelle said, her voice strong despite her trembling body. "I made my choice." "Wrong choice." Clint gestured to his men. "Get her. And if the Indian interferes, teach him what happens to those who steal from Clint Rowe." The men dismounted, moving toward them with menacing purpose. Tohan pushed Annabelle behind him, reaching for the knife at his belt, their only weapon. "Run," he told her urgently. "Get to the horses at the back, ride to my people." "I won't leave you," she insisted. "You must." His eyes met hers, intense and loving. "This is not the end for us, trust me." Behind them, the cabin was now fully engulfed in flames, the heat searing against their backs. Everything they had built together was burning. As Clint's men closed in, Tohan made his decision. He charged forward, knife in hand, creating a distraction. "Run, Annabelle, now!" She hesitated only a moment before turning and fleeing toward the back of the cabin where their horses were tethered. She could hear sounds of struggle behind her, men shouting, Tohan's voice raised in defiance. With shaking hands, she untied Tohan's horse, the stronger of the two, and pulled herself onto its back. As she did, she felt in her pocket for the dreamstone he had given her so many months ago. It was still there, smooth and cool against her fingers. Tohan appeared around the corner of the burning cabin, his face bloodied but his steps sure. Behind him, she could hear Clint shouting orders, the sounds of men regrouping. As Tohan lifted her onto his horse, Annabelle clutched the dreamstone tightly. "Did you dream of this too?" she asked, breathless. He looked at her through smoke and fury, his eyes reflecting the flames of their burning home. "No," he said. "This part we write ourselves." In one fluid motion, he swung up behind her and kicked the horse into motion. They rode into the darkness together, leaving behind the burning ruins of their home and the sounds of angry men. As they galloped away, Annabelle held tight to Tohan, her heart pounding with fear, but also with a fierce determination. They had lost their home, their possessions, even the precious book they had created together, but they still had each other. And that, she realized, was all that truly mattered. They rode through the night, the horses' hooves pounding a desperate rhythm beneath them. Annabelle clung to Tohan, her face pressed against his back, the smell of smoke still clinging to their clothes and hair. Behind them, the glow of their burning cabin gradually faded into the darkness. "Are they following us?" she asked when they finally slowed to rest the exhausted horse. Tohan listened to the night. "No, the fire will keep them busy for a while. And they don't know these lands as I do." It was bitterly cold. Annabelle shivered, wearing only her nightdress with Tohan's jacket wrapped around her shoulders. They had escaped with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the dreamstone. In her pocket. "Where are we going?" she asked as they continued at a slower pace. "To my people," Tohan replied. "It's a 2-day journey to the main Zuni village. We'll find shelter with them until we decide what to do next." By dawn, they had reached a small stream where they stopped to drink and rest. Annabelle's body ached from the long ride, and her eyes burned from smoke and tears. Everything we built, she said, staring into the water. Our home, our medicines, our book, all gone. Tohan knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. Buildings burn, things burn. He touched her heart. What matters most is still here. She leaned against him, drawing strength from his solid presence. I'm so tired, Tohan. I know. He looked around, assessing their surroundings. We'll rest, here for a few hours. It's hidden enough. He made her a simple shelter with branches and his coat, then sat beside her, keeping watch as she fell into an exhausted sleep. When she woke, the sun was high overhead, and Tohan had gathered some berries and roots for them to eat. It's not much, he apologized, but it will give us strength for the journey. As they ate, Annabelle thought about all they had lost. Our book, she said suddenly, all your father's knowledge, all our work together. Knowledge lives here, Tohan said, touching his head. And here. He touched his heart. We will write it again, better than before. They continued their journey, moving carefully through the rugged landscape. Tohan pointed out landmarks to her, teaching her to read the land as they traveled. See how the moss grows thicker on that side of the trees? That's north. Always know. Which way is north, and you'll never be truly lost. By nightfall, they had reached a series of small caves in a rocky hillside. We'll sleep here tonight, Tohan said. It's safe and out of the wind. Inside the largest cave, Tohan built a small fire, positioning it so the light wouldn't be visible from a distance. The warmth was a blessing after the cold day of travel. Do you think Clint will keep looking for us? Annabelle asked as they huddled close to the flames. A man like Roe doesn't give up easily, Tohan replied honestly. His pride was wounded when you chose me over him. Men like that don't forget. I'm sorry I brought this danger to you. Tohan shook his head. You brought life to me, Annabelle. Before you, I was just existing, healing bodies but empty inside. You woke something in me that I thought was lost. She looked at him in the flickering firelight, seeing the man who had dreamed her name before ever meeting her, who had seen her soul when everyone else only saw her shame. I love you, she said simply. It was the first time she had spoken the words aloud, though they had lived in her heart for months. Tohan touched her face gently. And I love you. Since before I knew your face, I think my heart was waiting for you. That night in the shelter of the cave, they came together as husband and wife in all but name. Their love, born in dreams and tested by fire, found its deepest expression in the quiet darkness, with only the stars as witnesses. They reached the Zuni village the next evening. It was larger than Annabelle had imagined. Dozens of adobe structures built in tiers against a hillside, smoke rising from cooking fires, children playing in the central area. Activity stopped as they rode in, all eyes turning to the strange sight of Tohan returning with a white woman. An older man stepped forward, his face weathered by years but his eyes sharp and alert. Tohan, he said in English, his gaze moving between them. You bring trouble with you. Elder Makia, Tohan greeted him respectfully. This is Annabelle. Our home was burned by white men who wish us harm. We seek sanctuary. The elder studied Annabelle for a long moment. The woman from your dreams, he finally said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Tohan confirmed. Makia nodded once. Come, you both need food and rest, then we will talk. They were led to a small adobe home at the edge of the village. Inside was simple but comfortable, woven rugs on the floor, a fire pit in the center, sleeping pallets along one wall. This was my grandmother's home, Tohan explained. It has been empty since she passed to the spirit world. A woman brought them food, a hearty stew with corn and beans, and clean clothes for Annabelle. The simple dress and moccasins were different from anything she had worn before, but comfortable and warm. That night they met with Elder Makia and other tribal leaders in the communal kiva, a circular underground chamber used for important meetings. Annabelle sat quietly beside Tohan as he explained everything that had happened. Their life together, the growing hostility from the town, and finally, Clint Rowe's attack. The white man believes she belongs to him, Tohan concluded. He will not stop looking. An older woman with silver hair spoke up. Why should we risk bringing his anger to our village? We have had peace with the white settlers. This could end. That peace. Grandmother speaks truth, a younger man agreed. The white man's law would say the woman belongs to Roe if there was a contract. Annabel couldn't stay silent any longer. I am not property to be owned, she said, her voice clear and steady. In your culture or mine, no person should belong to another against their will. The elders looked at her with surprise, some with approval, others with doubt. You speak boldly for a guest, Elder Makia observed. I speak from my heart, Annabel replied, as Tohan has taught me to do. A small smile touched Makia's lips. Indeed. He turned to the others. I have known Tohan since he was a boy. His dreams have always shown truth. If he dreamed this woman before she came, then their paths are meant to join. We cannot separate what the spirits have brought together. Not everyone agreed, but Makia's word carried weight. It was decided that Annabel and Tohan could stay in the village for now, though they would post additional watches in case Roe tracked them there. As they left the kiva, Tohan squeezed Annabel's hand. You impressed them. Few outsiders would speak in council. I was terrified, she admitted, but I couldn't let them discuss me as if I weren't there. Your spirit is strong, he said with pride. It's one of the many reasons I love you. In the days that followed, Annabel began to find her place in the Zuni village. Some welcomed her with cautious curiosity, others kept their distance, but none were openly hostile. She helped with cooking and weaving, humble tasks that allowed her to learn and contribute. Tohan resumed his role as a healer, treating villagers who had missed his skills during his absence. Annabel assisted him, applying what he had taught her and learning new methods from the tribal healers. Your hands are good for this work, an old medicine woman named Kaya told her after watching Annabel dress a child's wound. You listen to the body's voice. Tohan taught me, Annabel said. Kaya shook her head. No, this gift was in you already. Tohan simply helped you find it. At night, in the privacy of their small home, Annabel and Tohan began to rebuild what had been lost. They started a new medicine book, with Tohan recreating his father's knowledge and Annabel adding what she remembered from their work together. It will be better than before, Tohan said as they worked by firelight, because now we truly understand what can be lost and what cannot. Weeks passed, and as spring took hold, Annabel found herself truly happy despite everything they had endured. She was learning the Zuni language, making friends among the women, and feeling more at home than she ever had in St. Louis or at Clint's ranch. Then one day, Sam Wilson rode into the village. The watch spotted him first, one man approaching, openly, his hands visible to show he came in peace. Tohan and several warriors went to meet him at the village edge. I come with news, Wilson said, his face grave, and a warning. They brought him to Elder Makia's home, where Annabel joined them. Wilson removed his hat, nodding respectfully to her. Miss Creswell, good to see you well. What's happened, Sam? Tohan asked. Wilson took a deep breath. Clint Rowe has been gathering men, not just cowboys, but hard men from outside the territory. He's offering good money to anyone who'll help him find you. Fear clutched at Annabel's heart. Has he threatened the village? Not directly, but there's talk in town, ugly talk about cleaning out Indian lovers and teaching the Zuni a lesson. Wilson looked genuinely troubled. I don't think it's just about you anymore, miss. He's turned this into something bigger. A cause for men with hatred in their hearts. Elder Makia's face remained impassive, but his eyes were concerned. How many men? 15, maybe 20 now. More coming. Wilson shook his head. I quit the ranch. Couldn't be part of what he's planning. You rode here at great risk to yourself, Tohan said. We are grateful, Wilson nodded. Figured I owed you that much. Roe's not the man I thought he was. He turned to Annabel. I'm sorry for my part in bringing you to him, miss. You have nothing to apologize for, Sam, she said gently. After Wilson left with supplies and the tribe's thanks, the council gathered again. The threat to the village changed everything. We must prepare to defend ourselves, one of the warriors urged. Violence will only bring more violence, another countered. We should send messengers to the fort, seek protection from the army. Annabel listened to the debate, her heart growing heavier with each word. This was because of her. An entire community now at risk because she had followed her heart. That night, she couldn't sleep. She slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Tohan, and went outside. The village was quiet under a canopy of stars. She clutched the dreamstone in her hand, seeking its guidance. Couldn't sleep? Tohan's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him standing in the doorway. "I'm sorry, I didn't want to wake you." He joined her, wrapping a blanket around them both. "What troubles your mind?" "All of this is happening because of me," she said, her voice breaking. "Your people are in danger because I chose to be with you." "No," Tohan said firmly. "This is happening because of Clint Rowe's pride and hatred. You are not responsible for his actions. But if I had never come here, if you had never come, I would still be half alive, waiting for a dream that never materialized." He took her face in his hands. "Whatever comes, Annabelle, I would not trade one moment with you." His words comforted her, but the worry remained. In the days that followed, the village prepared for trouble. Warriors practiced with weapons. Lookouts were posted day and night. Women gathered supplies that could be quickly packed if evacuation became necessary. Annabelle tried to make herself useful, but guilt shadowed her every step. Some in the village had begun to look at her differently, not with hostility, but with quiet resignation, as if her presence was a storm that had come to them, unwelcome but inevitable. A week after Wilson's visit, Annabelle made a decision. She waited until Tohan was busy with the council, then slipped away to speak with Elder Makia alone. "I need to leave," she told him directly. "As long as I'm here, your people are in danger." The old man studied her thoughtfully. "And where would you go?" I don't know. Somewhere Clint won't think to look. Maybe east, to another territory." "Without Tohan?" Makia asked, though his eyes suggested he already knew her answer. "Yes." The word felt like a stone in her throat. "He belongs with his people. I've already taken too much from him." Makia was silent for a long moment. "You love him very much, to consider leaving him." Tears filled Annabelle's eyes. "I love him enough to want him safe." "Did you know," Makia said, his voice gentle, "that when Tohan first told me of his dreams about you, I advised him to ignore them? I said no good could come from loving a white woman." He smiled slightly at her surprise. "I was wrong. I have seen how you look at each other, how you move together like two parts of one spirit. Such love is rare, Annabelle. It should not be abandoned out of fear. But your people, my people have faced threats before. We will face more in the future. This is not the first time the Zuni have had to defend what is precious to us." He leaned forward. "If you truly wish to help, do not run away. Stand with us. Stand with him." His words gave her pause. Was she truly thinking of Tohan, or was she simply giving in to fear? Running away had never solved anything before. She returned to their home, her mind still unsettled. Tohan was there, working on their medicine book. He looked up as she entered, his face lighting with a smile that faded when he saw her expression. "What's wrong?" he asked, setting aside his work. Annabelle took a deep breath. "I spoke with Elder Makia about leaving, about drawing the danger away from the village." Pain flashed across Tohan's face. "You would leave? Without me?" "To protect you, to protect everyone here." Her voice broke. "I've caused so much trouble. Tohan?" He came to her, taking her hands in his. "Listen to me, Annabelle. Running solves nothing. It only postpones the reckoning that must come." His eyes held hers intently. "We face this together. Always together." "But what if someone gets hurt? What if you—" She couldn't finish the thought. "Life offers no guarantees," Tohan said softly. "But I know this. A life without you would be empty, no matter how safe." He pressed his forehead to hers. "We will find a way through this. Trust me." And she did. Despite her fears, despite the growing threat, she trusted him with all her heart. The next morning brought unexpected news. A rider from town arrived, not one of Rowe's men, but the son of the storekeeper, a young man named David, who had always been friendly to Tohan. "Army patrols coming," he reported breathlessly. after being brought to the council. "Captain Fletcher and 20 soldiers from Fort Bayard. They'll be here by tomorrow." "Why?" Elder Makia asked, his face revealing nothing of his thoughts. "Word reached the fort about Rowe gathering gunmen, making threats against the reservation." David glanced at Annabelle. "Some folks in town got worried about what he might do. Martha Jenkins, you remember, the banker's wife whose son you saved, she telegraphed her cousin who's married to an officer at the fort." Hope and disbelief mingled in Annabelle's heart. "People in town are helping us," David nodded. "Not everyone agrees with Clint Rowe, miss, especially after he started drinking heavy and talking wild about cleansing the territory of savages." He looked uncomfortable. "Begging your pardon for the language. The news changed everything. If the army was coming, Rowe and his men would think twice about attacking the village. There might be a peaceful resolution after all." But Tohan remained cautious. "Rowe won't give up easily," he warned the council, "and the army is not always a friend to our people. Still," Elder Makia said, "this gives us time, and time often reveals paths we could not see before." That evening, as Annabelle and Tohan walked through the village, a strange calm had settled over them. Tomorrow would bring the army, and with them, perhaps, a confrontation with Clint Rowe. But tonight was theirs. "Whatever happens," Annabelle said, stopping to look up at the first stars appearing in the twilight sky, "I want you to know that choosing you was the best decision of my life." Tohan's eyes softened as he looked at her. "When I dreamed of you, I saw sorrow, but I also saw strength. I saw a woman who would change my life." He touched her cheek gently. "Dreams show possibilities, Annabelle, but you made the possibility real." They held each other under the darkening sky, finding peace in each other's arms despite the uncertainty that lay ahead. Dawn was just breaking when the lookout's call alerted the village. Riders approaching, not from the direction of the fort, but from the town. Tohan was instantly alert, pulling on his clothes. "Stay inside," he told Annabelle, "until we know what's happening." But she wouldn't be left behind. "Together," she reminded him. "We face this together." Outside, warriors were gathering, weapons ready but not raised. Elder Makia stood at the front, his face calm but resolute. The riders came into view. 12 men with Clint Rowe at their head. They stopped a respectful distance from the village entrance, just out of arrow range. Rowe sat tall in his saddle, his face hard and his eyes cold as they scanned the gathered Zuni until they found Annabelle, standing beside Tohan. "I've come for what's mine," he called out, his voice carrying in the still morning air. "Send her out and there won't be any trouble." Elder Makia stepped forward. "The woman is not yours. She is here, of her own choice, under our protection." Rowe's face darkened with anger. "Your protection means nothing. I have a contract with her father. The law is on my side." "The law does not allow you to burn homes or threaten peaceful people," Annabelle called back, her voice stronger than she felt. "The army is coming, Clint. Captain Fletcher and his men will be here today." Something flickered in Rowe's eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or concern, but it was quickly masked. "You're lying." "She speaks truth," Elder Makia said. "Turn back now, before you bring more trouble upon yourself." Rowe's hand moved to his gun. "I'm not leaving without her." The tension in the air was palpable. Warriors raised their bows slightly, ready to defend their people. Rowe's men shifted nervously, some looking less certain than their leader. Then a new sound broke the standoff. Hoofbeats, many of them, approaching fast from the east. All heads turned to see a column of riders in blue uniforms cresting the Cow Hill, the morning sun glinting off brass buttons and rifle barrels. "The army?" Annabelle breathed, relief washing over her. Tohan squeezed her hand. Just in time. Captain Fletcher, a tall man with a thick mustache and an air of authority, rode ahead of his men. He surveyed the scene quickly, taking in Rowe and his armed men facing the Zuni village. "What's going on? Here?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the tension. "Captain." Clint touched the brim of his hat in a show of respect that didn't reach his eyes. "Just a private matter. This woman," he pointed at Annabelle, "is my fiancée. She's influenced by these people. I'm here to take her home." Fletcher looked at Annabelle. "Is that true, ma'am? Are you being held against your will?" "No, Captain," she replied firmly. "I chose to leave Mr. Rowe before our wedding. He has been harassing us ever since, even burning down our home." The captain's eyes narrowed as he turned back to Rowe. "Is that so?" "She doesn't know what she's saying," Rowe insisted. "She's been bewitched by that savage." He gestured contemptuously at Tohan. "Bewitched?" Fletcher repeated skeptically. "Mr. Rowe, I received reports that you've been gathering men and making threats against this reservation. That's a federal matter." "Lies," Rowe spat. "I'm just here for what's legally mine." "People aren't property in this territory," Fletcher said coldly. "Not anymore." He straightened in his saddle. "You and your men will disperse immediately. If you have a legitimate legal claim, take it to the territorial court in Santa Fe." Rowe's face flushed with anger. "You're taking their side? Against a white man?" "I'm upholding the peace," Fletcher replied evenly. "Something you seem intent on breaking." For a moment it seemed Rowe might challenge the captain. His hand hovered near his gun, and his eyes burned with hatred. But even in his anger, he wasn't fool enough to take on the U.S. Army. "This isn't over," he said, his gaze fixing on Annabelle and Tohan. "Not by a long shot." With that, he wheeled his horse around and rode away, his men following reluctantly behind. As they disappeared into the distance, Annabelle sagged against Tohan, the tension draining from her body. "Is it really over?" Tohan put his arm around her, watching the horizon. "For now," he said cautiously, "but Clint Rowe is not a man who forgets easily." Captain Fletcher approached them, dismounting to speak with Elder Makia. "We'll maintain a presence in the area for a while," he assured them. "Make sure there's no further trouble." "We are grateful," Makia said with a formal nod. Later, as the excitement died down and the village returned to its normal routines, Annabelle and Tohan walked to a quiet spot overlooking the valley. "What happens now?" she asked, leaning against his solid strength. "We rebuild," Tohan said simply. "Again, if necessary, as many times as life requires." Annabelle thought about all they had endured, her flight from a loveless marriage, their home burned to ashes, the threats and hatred they had faced. Yet through it all, their love had only grown stronger. "I'm not afraid anymore," she realized. "Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Tohan smiled, a rare, full smile that transformed his serious face. "Yes," he agreed, "together." As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, they held each other close, two souls joined by dreams and strengthened by fire. The future was uncertain, with Clint Rowe's threat still hanging over them, but in this moment, they had found peace. And for now, that was enough. Summer settled over the land, bringing long days of golden sunshine and warm breezes. 3 months had passed since Captain Fletcher and his soldiers had turned Clint Rowe away from the Zuni village. 3 months of cautious peace. Life had found a new rhythm for Annabelle and Tohan. With the help of the tribe, they had built a small home on the edge of the village, a simple structure of adobe and wood, but filled with the warmth of their love. Annabelle had learned enough of the Zuni language to converse with the women who had gradually accepted her as one of their own, and Tohan had resumed his role as healer, with Annabelle working by his side. "You've changed," Elder Makia observed one evening as he visited their home. "Both of you." "How so?" Annabelle asked, serving the old man a cup of herbal tea. Makia's weathered face creased in a smile. "You stand taller, speak with more certainty, and Tohan," he glanced at the younger man, "he smiles now. Before you came, I had almost forgotten what his smile looked like." It was true, Annabelle realized. The hardships they had faced had forged them into stronger versions of themselves. She was no longer the timid society girl from St. Louis, afraid of scandal and bound by rules. And Tohan had opened himself to joy in a way he hadn't before. "We have been fortunate," Tohan said, sitting beside Annabelle, "despite everything." "And what of Rowe?" Makia asked, his expression turning serious. "There has been no word?" Tohan shook his head. "Nothing. The army patrols have seen no sign of him or his men." "That is good," Makia said, though his eyes remained troubled. "But remember, a wolf that cannot be seen is still a wolf." After the elder left, Annabelle and Tohan sat quietly by their fire. "Do you think Clint has given up?" she asked, voicing the question that had lingered between them for months. "No," Tohan replied honestly. "A man like that does not forget. He is waiting for something." "For the army to leave," Annabelle guessed. Captain Fletcher said they couldn't stay forever. Indeed, the military presence had already been reduced. Where once 20 soldiers had patrolled the area, now there were only 5, and rumor had it they would soon be recalled to the fort. "We cannot live in fear," Tohan said, taking her hand. "Whatever comes, we will face it." That night, as moonlight filtered through their small window, Annabelle woke with a start. Something had changed. She lay still, listening, trying to identify what had disturbed her sleep. Then she realized Tohan was talking in his sleep, words in the Zuni language flowing from his lips, his body tense beside her. "Tohan," she whispered, touching his shoulder. "Wake up." He jolted awake, his eyes wide and unfocused. "The water," he said urgently. "I saw it in dreams, rising, threatening." "It was just a nightmare," Annabelle soothed, though something in his tone made her uneasy. Tohan shook his head, fully awake now. "Not a nightmare, a vision." He sat up, running a hand through his long hair. "I saw the creek that feeds our village. It was rising, flooding, but the sky was clear. No rain. What does it mean?" "I don't know." His brow furrowed in concentration. "But we should check the water tomorrow." They rose with the dawn, walking together to the creek that provided the village with fresh water. It flowed as it always, had clear and steady between its banks. "See?" Annabelle said with relief. "Everything's normal." But Tohan wasn't convinced. He knelt by the water, dipping his hand in and then bringing it to his lips. His face darkened. Something is wrong. The taste is off. He followed the creek upstream with Annabelle close behind. They walked for nearly an hour before Tohan suddenly stopped, holding up his hand for silence. Voices carried on the morning air, men's voices, rough with effort. "Stay here," Tohan whispered, but Annabelle shook her head. "Together," she insisted quietly. They crept forward through the brush until they could see the source of the voices. 5 men were working at a point where the creek narrowed between rocky banks. They had built a crude dam and were pouring something from barrels into the water above it. "Poison," Tohan breathed, his face grim. "They're poisoning the water supply to the village." Annabelle's blood ran cold as she recognized one of the men, a ranch hand who had worked for Clint Rowe. "Clint's behind this," she whispered. "He's found another way to attack us." They retreated carefully, then ran back toward the village once. They were out of earshot. Elder Makia listened gravely to their report, then called the council together. "We must stop the poison from reaching our wells," he ordered, "and warn everyone not to drink from the creek." Warriors were sent to divert the water flow away from the village, while others went to confront the men at the dam. Annabelle helped, organized the women to carry water from a spring on the far side of the village, untouched by the creek. By midday, word came back. The men had fled when confronted, leaving behind their barrels and tools. The poison had been contained before it could do serious harm, though some livestock that had drunk from the lower creek were already sick. "This is just the beginning," Tohan told the council. "Rowe is testing us, seeing how we respond. Then we must be ready for whatever comes next," Elder Makia declared. For the next week, the village maintained constant vigilance. Warriors patrolled the boundaries, checking the water sources daily. Everyone was on edge, waiting for the next attack. It came from an unexpected direction. Annabelle was gathering herbs with 2 Zuni women when a rider approached from the direction of Red Ash. It was David, the storekeeper's son, his horse lathered from hard riding. "Miss Creswell," he called, spotting her. "Thank God I found you." "David, what's happened?" The young man dismounted, catching his breath. "It's Rowe. He's gone to Santa. Faye with papers. Says he has a contract that gives him legal right to you as his wife. Judge Wilson is in his pocket. Everyone knows it. He'll get what he wants." Fear clutched at Annabelle's heart. "When?" "He left 3 days ago. Could be back with a court order and federal marshals any day now." David looked genuinely distressed. "My pa said I should warn you. Rowe's been telling everyone he'll have the army remove you from the reservation by force if necessary." "Annabelle," thanked him, then hurried back to the village with the news. Tohan and the council listened gravely. "Can he do this?" she asked when she had finished her report. "Can he use the law to force me to go with him?" Elder Makya looked troubled. "The white man's law is a strange thing. It says women are free yet treats them as property when convenient. If he comes with federal marshals and official papers, the tribe cannot stop him without risking war," Tohan said, his voice tight with anger. "And Captain Fletcher would be bound to enforce a legal order, even if he doesn't agree with it." "Then, what do we do?" Annabelle asked, fighting back tears of frustration. The council debated long into the night. Some suggested Annabelle should hide deep in Zuni territory where no white man could find her. Others thought she should flee to another territory entirely, perhaps California, where Roe's influence couldn't reach. "No," Tohan said firmly when these options were raised. "Running solves nothing. It only delays the inevitable." "Then what?" Annabelle asked, exhausted and afraid. Tohan was silent for a moment, thinking. "We must change the rules of this game," he finally said. "Roe uses the white man's law against us. Perhaps we can use it for ourselves." The next morning, Tohan and Annabelle rode to Red Ash with 4 Zuni warriors as escorts. The town had grown since Annabelle had first arrived nearly a year ago. New buildings lined the main street, and more people hurried about their business. Their arrival caused a stir. People stopped to stare at the unusual sight of a white woman and 5 Indians riding openly into town. Some faces showed hostility, others curiosity, and a few, to Annabelle's surprise, showed respect. They tied their horses outside the law office of Herbert Jameson, the only lawyer in Red Ash. Jameson was a thin man with spectacles and a nervous manner, but he listened carefully as Tohan and Annabelle explained their situation. "Mr. Roe does indeed have a contract with your father," Jameson confirmed, examining the copy David had provided. "But there are several problems with using it to claim you as his wife." "What problems?" Annabelle asked eagerly. "First, it's a marriage arrangement, not a bill of sale. You cannot be compelled to marry against your will, regardless of what your father agreed to." Jameson adjusted his spectacles. "Second, the contract specified a wedding date that has long passed. Since no marriage took place on that date, the contract could be considered void." Hope sparked in Annabelle's heart. "So he has no legal claim to me?" "Not under territorial law, no." Jameson hesitated. "However, Judge Wilson in Santa Fe is known to be flexible in his interpretations when it benefits certain parties, and Mr. Roe has considerable influence." "What can we do?" Tohan asked. Jameson thought for a moment. "The most definitive solution would be if you were already legally married to someone else." He glanced between them. "Are you?" "No," Annabelle admitted. "We live as husband and wife, but there has been no formal ceremony recognized by either your law or Zuni custom." "Then I suggest you remedy that immediately," Jameson said. "A legal marriage would invalidate any claim Roe might make, regardless of which judge hears the case." As they left the lawyer's office, Annabelle felt a mixture of hope and uncertainty. "Can we do this, get married by white law?" "We will find a way," Tohan assured her. Their answer came from an unexpected source. As they prepared to leave town, Martha Jenkins approached them. The banker's wife looked nervously over her shoulder before speaking. "I overheard what you need," she said quietly. "Reverend Thompson at the church is a good man. He believes all God's children deserve happiness. If you go to him, he might help." The small white church at the end of the main street had always seemed like a symbol of the world that had rejected Annabelle. But now, it might offer salvation of a different kind. Reverend Thompson was tending his garden when they approached. He was an older man with kind eyes and work-roughened hands. "Mrs. Jenkins told me you might come," he said, wiping soil from his palms. "Come inside, where we can talk privately." In the cool dimness of the church, Annabelle and Tohan explained their situation. The Reverend listened without interruption, his expression thoughtful. "What you're asking is unusual," he said when they had finished. "A marriage between a white woman and a Zuni man will not be welcomed by many in this town." "We know," Annabelle said. "But our love is real, Reverend, as real as any you've blessed in this church." Thompson studied them for a long moment. "I believe you," he finally said. "And I believe God brings souls together for his purposes, regardless of worldly divisions." He nodded, decision made. "I will marry you today and record it properly in the church registry." Mr. Rowe will find it difficult to challenge a legal Christian marriage even with Judge Wilson's help. Relief washed over Annabel. "Thank you, Reverend. You don't know what this means to us." "I think I do," he said with a small smile. "Now, let's prepare. A wedding, even a hasty one, should still honor the commitment you're making." While the Zuni warriors stood watch outside, Reverend Thompson performed a simple ceremony in the empty church. Annabel wore her plain dress with wildflowers from the churchyard woven into her hair. Tohan stood tall and dignified in his best buckskins. The only witnesses were Martha Jenkins, who had bravely volunteered, and the Reverend's wife. "Do you, Annabel Cresswell, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Thompson asked, his voice solemn in the quiet church. "I do," Annabel replied, her heart full as she looked into Tohan's eyes. "And do you, Tohan of the Zuni people, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do," Tohan said, his deep voice steady and sure. "Then, by the authority vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife." The Reverend smiled. "What God has joined together, let no man put asunder." As they emerged from the church, the setting sun painted the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink. For the moment at least, they were safe, legally bound in a way that even Clint Rowe couldn't easily break. They spent the night at the home of Martha and Harold Jenkins, who had reluctantly but firmly opened their doors to the newlyweds. Harold, still uncomfortable with the situation but moved by his wife's insistence, had agreed on the condition that the Zuni warriors camp outside town. "It's not perfect," Martha apologized, showing them to a small guest room. "But it's safer than trying to return to the village after dark." The next morning they prepared to leave early, hoping to avoid any unnecessary confrontations in town. But as they mounted their horses, a commotion at the far end of the street caught their attention. Riders were coming in, a large group kicking up dust as they approached. At their head was Clint Rowe, and beside him, two men wearing the badges. "So, federal marshals. They're back already," Annabel gasped. "He must have ridden day and night to return so quickly." Tohan's face was grim. "We must reach the church records before they do. Reverend Thompson is our proof." They urged their horses toward the church, the Zuni warriors forming a protective circle around them, but Rowe had seen them. He broke away from his group, spurring his horse directly toward them, the marshals following close behind. "Annabel!" Rowe shouted, his face twisted with anger and triumph. "I have a court order. You're coming with me." They reached the church. Just moments before Rowe, Reverend Thompson was sweeping the steps but straightened as he saw the commotion. "What's happening here?" he demanded as both groups dismounted. "I have a legal order," Rowe announced, brandishing a document, "authorizing these federal marshals to remove Annabel Cresswell from Indian custody and return her to me, her legal fiancé." "That's Miss Cresswell no longer," Thompson said calmly. "The lady is now Mrs. Tohan, legally married under the laws of this territory and in the eyes of God." Rowe's face flushed dark with rage. "That's impossible. No proper minister would perform such a ceremony. I performed it myself yesterday afternoon," Thompson replied, unruffled. "The marriage is recorded in our church registry and witnessed by respected members of this community." One of the marshals, a grizzled man with a skeptical expression, took the document from Rowe's hand. "Is this true, Reverend?" "It is indeed. Come inside, and I'll show you the record." Inside the cool church, Thompson opened the heavy registry book to the most recent entry. There, in neat handwriting, was the record of marriage between Annabel Cresswell and Tohan, with the signatures of both bride and groom, the Reverend, and the witnesses. The marshal studied it, then looked at the court order in his hand. "This changes things, Mr. Rowe. The order specifically names Annabel Cresswell, unmarried daughter of Jonathan Cresswell. If she's legally married, this order doesn't apply." "This is outrageous," Rowe exploded. "It's a fraud, a scheme to circumvent justice." "It appears to be a legal marriage," the marshal said firmly. "If you wish to challenge it, you'll need to return to Santa Fe and obtain a different order." Rowe turned to Annabel, his eyes cold with hatred. "You think this changes anything? You think I'll just walk away after what you've done to me?" "What I've done?" Annabel's voice was steady as she faced him. "I chose not to marry a man who sees women as property, who burns homes and poisons water when he doesn't get his way, who uses money and influence to bend the law to his will." "You humiliated me," Roe hissed. "The whole territory knows how you left me at the altar for this savage." "The only savage here is you, Clint," Annabel replied, her chin high. "Tohan has shown more honor, more humanity, more love than you ever could." Something in Roe snapped. With a roar of rage, he lunged forward, reaching for Annabel. But Tohan was faster, stepping between them, his stance protective but not aggressive. "Enough," he said, his voice quiet but powerful. "You have lost, Roe. Accept it with what dignity you have left." For a moment it seemed Roe might attack anyway. His hand moved toward his gun, and tension crackled in the air. But the marshals stepped forward, their own hands on their weapons. "Don't make this worse, Roe," the older marshal warned. "Our job was to enforce a specific court order. That order is invalid now. Draw that gun, and you'll be the one breaking the law." Trapped by his own scheme, Roe's fury had nowhere to go. He stood breathing heavily, his face contorted with hatred, as he looked from the marshals to Annabel and Tohan. "This isn't over," he finally said, his voice a low threat. "You'll regret this. Both of you." "No, Clint," Annabel said softly. "It is over. You've lost everything that matters, the respect of this town, the trust of good men like Sam Wilson, even the blind obedience of the law. Walk away now, before you lose what little you have left." Something in her words seemed to reach him, or perhaps it was the realization that even the marshals he had brought with him were now looking at him with distaste. The fight seemed to drain out of him, leaving behind an emptiness that was almost pitiful. Without another word, Roe turned and walked out of the church. They heard him mount his horse and ride away alone. The older marshal turned to Annabel and Tohan. "I apologize for this trouble. We were misled about the situation." "You were doing your duty," Tohan acknowledged. "Thank you for respecting the truth when you saw it." As the marshals left, Reverend Thompson smiled at the young couple. "It seems your marriage has already faced its first test." "And passed," Annabel said, taking Tohan's hand. "Thank you for everything, Reverend. I merely did what was right," Thompson replied. "Now go, live your lives in peace. You've earned it." The journey back to the Zuni village was filled with a lightness that neither Annabel nor Tohan had felt in months. The shadow of Clint Roe had finally lifted, and they were truly legally husband and wife. Word of their victory spread quickly through the village. That night a celebration was held, a proper Zuni wedding ceremony to complement their Christian one. Under the stars, with the entire tribe as witnesses, Annabel and Tohan exchanged vows in the Zuni language, binding their hearts in both worlds. "Two ceremonies, two traditions," Elder Makya observed as they sat by the celebration fire. "Yet one love. Perhaps this is how our peoples will eventually find peace, through hearts that recognize no boundaries." Later, as they walked back to their home, Tohan stopped suddenly, looking up at the night sky. "What is it?" Annabel asked. "I just realized," he said, wonder in his voice. "I have had no dreams of you for many months now." "Is that bad?" she asked, suddenly concerned. Tohan smiled, pulling her close. "No, it means the dreams have served their purpose. They led me to you. Now we live our reality together, not in dreams." Annabel rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "Do you think Clint will ever truly give up?" "Men like Roe are driven by pride and the need to control," Tohan said thoughtfully. "But even such men can change when they realize what truly matters. Perhaps one day he will find his own peace. And if he doesn't, then we will face whatever comes, as we always have." Tohan kissed her forehead gently. Together. Inside their home, Annabel took out the dreamstone that had guided her so many months ago. It still felt cool and heavy in her palm, its blue, veins catching the firelight. "I've been thinking," she said, turning the stone over in her hands, "about what you said when we first met, that dreams show us what has been, what is, and sometimes what may be." "Yes," Tohan nodded, watching her curiously. "I want to learn," Annabel said, her eyes bright with purpose. Not just about healing bodies, but about dreams, about the spirit world. I want to understand all of it, your world and mine, and how they can come together. Tohan's face softened with love and pride. Then I will teach you and learn from you in return. That is the beauty of two souls joined as one. We grow together, becoming more than either could be alone. As they sat by their fire, planning their future with new freedom and hope, Annabelle thought about the long, strange journey that had brought her to this moment. She had come west in shame, sent to marry a man she didn't know, expected to vanish into obedience and silence. Instead, she had found her voice, her strength, and her true love, a man who had dreamed her name before ever seeing her face, who had recognized her soul when no one else could. Outside, the night wind whispered through the village, carrying the scent of sage and pine. Somewhere in the darkness, an owl called once, twice, 3 times. A good omen, Tohan had taught her. "I love you," she said simply, taking his hand in hers. "And I love you," he replied, "across all distances, through all dreams, and into whatever future awaits us." Together they sat, hand in hand, as the fire burned low and the stars wheeled overhead. A woman once sold, a man once silent, and a love born from the space between visions and choice. In the end, they had written their own story, and it was just beginning.